Hello, everybody, and welcome. I'm so incredibly thrilled to have you here for this explainer today because we're diving into something that almost every single student and parent is going to face at some point, and that is exam anxiety. I mean, just picture it for a second, right? The late nights totally fueled by caffeine, the massive piles of revision guides taking over the entire desk, and that tight, awful knot in your stomach when you realize the exam is literally just weeks away. Whether you're navigating IGCSEs, A-levels, or the IB diploma, that pressure, well, it can feel visceral and just completely immense. But what if I told you it really doesn't have to be a nightmare of stress? Today, we're going to unpack the ultimate blueprint to surviving high-stakes exams from a place of real calm and control, completely ditching the panic.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to cover the anatomy of exam stress, calming the nervous system, the power of structure, mastering the Pomodoro technique, the exam preparation timeline, and finally, how parents can help.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, the anatomy of exam stress, understanding pressure. We really have to acknowledge right out of the gate that for a lot of teenagers, these exams are literally their very first encounter with intense academic pressure. So I want to ask you a question directly, and I want you to be totally honest with yourself. Have you ever been sitting in a test, looked at a question you absolutely know you studied for, and just drawn a total blank? Like you're staring at the page, your heart starts to race, and you realize the information you literally studied just hours ago has seemingly vanished into thin air. The clock is ticking, and suddenly you just can't think straight. Look, I want to validate right now that this terror is completely normal. And more importantly, it is absolutely not your fault.
This kind of intense ongoing stress often leads to a hidden epidemic in our schools, and that's burnout. Now, burnout is a whole lot more than just being tired. It is a state of deep emotional and physical exhaustion. It's often accompanied by this really heavy sense of cynicism or detachment from your subjects, and ultimately, it leads to a severe drop in academic effectiveness. It basically creates this vicious cycle that students get hopelessly stuck in. You know the drill. A student will stay up until 2 a.m. highlighting notes in an absolute panic. They wake up entirely exhausted, find themselves completely unable to focus in class, panic about falling even further behind, and so what do? They stay up until 2 a.m. again the very next night.
To really understand why this happens, we've got to look at the neuroscience. When we face severe stress, our brain's stress center totally takes over, and our executive functioning, the part of the brain responsible for strategizing and organizing, literally goes offline. Our biological instinct just pushes us to fight, flee, or freeze. So, drawing a blank in an exam, that's simply your brain entering a biological freeze mode. And on top of that, our storytelling mind absolutely loves to create massive mountains out of molehills. A student's brain jumps rapidly from, oh no, I don't know this one answer, directly to, I'm going to fail this exam, I'm never getting into university, and I'm going to completely ruin my life. It just fills in the blanks with worst-case scenarios that simply aren't true.
Moving right along to Section 2, calming the nervous system with biological hacks. So, if drawing a blank is a biological response, then we can absolutely use biological hacks to bring the brain's executive function back online. This comparison brilliantly illustrates the key difference in our nervous system. Think of the sympathetic nervous system as this chaotic, swirling storm cloud of panic. That's your fight, flight, or freeze response. But on the flip side, we can purposefully activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which you can picture as a deeply rooted, calm, and sturdy tree. This system is responsible for restoring calm and grounding the mind and body. The trick is, we have to intentionally signal to our bodies that the storm has passed and that we are safe. One of the absolute best ways to do this is a super simple technique called box breathing, or the 4-4-4-4 method. It's incredibly straightforward. You inhale deeply for 4 seconds, you hold that breath for 4 seconds, exhale slowly for 4 seconds, and then hold again for 4 seconds. The reason this works so magically is entirely mechanical. By deliberately slowing your breathing down, you are forcefully lowering your heart rate. This physical change sends an immediate all-clear signal directly to the amygdala, which is basically your brain's alarm bell. Just repeating this 3 to 5 times tells your brain at a fundamental physiological level to stand down. You are safe. Now, there are a bunch of other amazing mindfulness exercises you can use as well. There's 2-1-4 breathing, or the hot chocolate breath, where you literally imagine gently smelling and cooling a hot cup of cocoa. There's body grounding, like the feet, seat, hands practice. That's where you focus your attention, like a spotlight, on the physical sensations of your feet on the floor, your seat on the chair, and your hands on the desk. You can even try EFT tapping, which is a technique where you use 2 fingers to gently tap on specific acupressure points on your face and collarbone to physically release held tension in the body. The real trick here is that making these exercises a regular preventative practice keeps your mind from spiraling into that storm cloud in the first place. Let's jump to Section 3, the power of structure and managing your time.
Okay, now that we've got the psychological tools to manage our minds, let's look at the tactical tools to manage our time. Because structured learning, it is the ultimate antidote to academic chaos. We really have to shift from being a frantic crammer to a structured learner. Reactive studying sounds a lot like waking up and saying, what should I study today? And honestly, that just leads to procrastination and panic. Proactive studying, on the other hand, asks, what part of the syllabus am I mastering this week? It relies on syllabus mapping, scheduled revision, and, this is a big one, guilt-free rest. You see, when you don't have a plan, even when you're watching TV or trying to sleep, a part of your brain is feeling terribly guilty for not studying. Structure actually gives you permission to relax. Clarity completely eliminates the fear of the unknown.
The core pillars of structured learning start with syllabus mapping. That just means breaking down the entire curriculum into manageable, weekly targets. Next, you use bite-sized study blocks to maintain focus. You also absolutely must implement scheduled revision and active recall. This is so vital. Simply rereading your notes or highlighting textbook pages might feel very productive, but it doesn't actually build memory. Active recall, like using flashcards or timed past papers, literally forces your brain to retrieve the information, which is how real learning happens. And finally, 8 hours of sleep. Notice this is marked as non-negotiable. Sleep is a biological requirement for memory retention, guys. It is not a reward for studying hard.
Which brings us to Section 4, mastering the Pomodoro technique and using study blocks. So how do we actually execute those bite-sized study blocks we just talked about? Well, before we break it down, here's a really fun fact for you. This highly effective time management method was created by Francesco Cirillo back in the late 1980s, and he named it after the simple tomato-shaped kitchen timer he used while he was studying. Pomodoro actually means tomato in Italian. I always find it wonderfully ironic that a little plastic piece of fruit is directly responsible for millions of past exams worldwide. It's just brilliant. Anyway, here is the exact cycle. You set a timer for 25 minutes and you focus entirely on one single task. When the timer rings, you take a 5-minute break completely away from your screen to stretch or just breathe. You repeat this cycle 4 times and then you take a longer 15 to 30-minute break. So the crucial point here is understanding the psychology of why 25 minutes works so well. It is the absolute sweet spot. It's short enough that you can trick a procrastinating brain into starting by just saying, come on, it's only 25 minutes. But it is also long enough to actually get deep, focused work done once you fall into a rhythm. It completely removes the dread of an endless study session. Up next is Section 5, the exam preparation timeline. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Now, how do we zoom out and apply this structure over the long term? Preparing for massive exams like IGCSEs or A-levels really is a marathon. It is absolutely not a last-minute sprint. Looking at 12 to 18 months out, this is like your baseline training. Your focus is just on building strong foundations, keeping up with classwork, and identifying weak spots early on. Then 6 to 12 months before exams, structured revision begins. That means creating timetables and pulling out past papers. 3 to 6 months out, that's the high-intensity altitude training. This is crunch time, featuring intensive, timed practice using official mark schemes to see exactly what examiners want from you. And finally, exam week. Notice that the focus here drastically shifts from pushing hard to light review and pure well-being. During exam week itself, there are some very clear do's and don'ts. First, do only light review to consolidate knowledge. Cramming totally new topics right now will only increase your anxiety. Do ensure all your equipment is packed and ready the night before. And crucially, do not let one bad paper affect the next one. This is a massive psychological challenge for students. If you think you absolutely bombed your morning math paper, it is incredibly easy to carry that panic straight into your afternoon history paper, potentially ruining both. You really have to compartmentalize. Once a paper is handed in, it's gone. Do not discuss it with friends in the hallway, analyzing every single question. Just pivot to the next challenge. And as for post-exam debriefs, only do this if the student actually wants to talk about it.
This leads us perfectly into Section 6, how parents can help by being a facilitator. Speaking of parents, let's pivot and talk directly to the parents and guardians watching this explainer right now. Your role really needs to transition from being a stressful taskmaster to a supportive facilitator. And if you feel like you can't help because, well, you don't know the syllabus, I want you to listen to this. Research consistently shows that parental engagement is one of the most powerful factors in student achievement. It is literally more impactful than class size, school type, or even socioeconomic background. So you don't need to be an expert in A-level chemistry to make a huge difference. You just need to be an expert in providing a safe, calm environment. Your daily support and your belief in them matters enormously.
But how we communicate that support is absolutely key. Look at this comparison here. Asking, have you studied yet? Well, that feels pretty reactive, and honestly, it often comes across as nagging. Instead, try asking, what's on your study plan today? Or, what can I do to help you right now? This proactive approach helps scaffold their organizational skills without micromanaging them. Importantly, you gotta pay attention to your body language and tone when you ask these questions. How a parent asks totally dictates whether the student's nervous system stays calm and parasympathetic or goes straight into a defensive, sympathetic panic. Give them autonomy while showing you are firmly in their corner.
Now, as a facilitator, you also need to monitor for warning signs that they might need a bit more help, like a professional tutor or a school counselor. Academically speaking, watch if they are consistently scoring below their targets or if they understand the content but just can't apply it to exam questions. Emotionally, look out for persistent fatigue, sleep problems, or a sudden loss of confidence. And pay special attention to avoidance behaviors. For example, is your teenager suddenly obsessively cleaning their bedroom instead of opening their books? Or maybe they're picking fights over dinner just to avoid talking about school. These are major red flags of overwhelm. Early intervention is far, far more effective than waiting until the pressure boils over completely. I want to ground this whole explainer with one incredibly powerful quote from our sources. Your child needs to know that your love and support are not conditional on their exam results. The pressure cooker of modern education often makes young people feel like their entire future hinges on a single Tuesday morning in a drafty sports hall. Yes, exams are absolutely important, but keeping perspective creates an environment where a child performs at their best because they are motivated by aspiration and not paralyzed by fear. Unconditional love is the ultimate safety net here. A child's worth is never, ever tied to a letter grade on a piece of paper. So, as we wrap up, I want to leave you with this provocative question. How will you transform your study environment today? I really want to challenge every student watching to pick just one thing from this explainer to try this week. Maybe you go buy a quirky tomato timer, or maybe you just practice box breathing tonight before bed. And I challenge the parents watching to ask one proactive, supportive question tomorrow instead of nagging. You have the blueprint in your hands right now. You can absolutely move from chaos to calm. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. Keep learning, keep structuring, and you're going to do absolutely great.